And Terach took his son Abram and his grandson Lot, the son of Haran, and Sarai, his daughter-in-law, the woman of his son Abram, and all the souls of his household, and went with them from Kasdim to go to the land of Canaan. And when they came as far as the land of Haran, they remained there, for it was exceedingly good land for pasture, and of sufficient extent for those who accompanied them. And the people of the land of Haran saw that Abram was good and upright with Elohim and men, and that Yahweh Eloheinu was with him. And some of the people of the land of Haran came and joined Abram, and he taught them the instruction of Yahweh and his ways. And these men remained with Abram in his house, and they adhered to him. And Abram remained in the land 3 years. And at the expiration of the 3 years, Yahweh appeared to Abram and said to him, I am Yahweh who brought you forth from Kasdim and delivered you from the hands of all your enemies. And now, therefore, if you will hearken to my voice and guard my commandments, my statutes, and my Torah, then will I cause your enemies to fall before you. And I will multiply your seed like the stars of heaven, and I will send my blessing upon all the works of your hands, and you shall lack nothing. Arise now, take your woman and all belongings to you, and go to the land of Canaan, and remain there, and I will be unto you for an Elohim, and I will bless you. And Abram rose and took his woman and all belongings to him. And he went to the land of Canaan, as Yahweh had told him, and Abram was 50 years old when he went from Haran. And Abram came to the land of Canaan and dwelt in the midst of the city, and he there pitched his tent amongst the children of Canaan, inhabitants of the land. And Yahweh appeared to Abram when he came to the land of Canaan, and he said to him, This is the land which I gave you and your seed after you forever, and I will make your seed like the stars of heaven, and I will give you your seed for your inheritance, all the lands which you see. And Abram built an altar in the place where Elohim had spoken to him, and Abram there called upon the name of Yahweh. At that time, at the end of 3 years of Abram's dwelling in the land of Canaan, in the year Noah died, which was the 58th year of the life of Abram, and all the days of Noah lived, there were 950 years, and he died. And Abram dwelt in the land of Canaan, he, his woman, and all belongings to him, and all those that accompanied him, together with those that joined him from the people of the land. But Nahor, Abram's brother, and Terach, his father, and Lot, the son of Haran, and all belonging to them dwelt in Haran. In the 5th year of Abram's dwelling in the land of Canaan, the people of Sidom and Amorah and all the cities of the circle of the Yarden revolted from the power of Kedorlaomer, king of Elam. For all the kings of the cities of the circle of the Yarden had served Kedorlaomer for 12 years and given him a yearly tax. But in those days, in the 13th year, they rebelled against him. And in the 10th year of Abram's dwelling in the land of Canaan, there was war between Nimrod, king of Shinar, and Kedorlaomer, king of Elam. And Nimrod came to fight with Kedorlaomer and to subdue him. For Kedorlaomer was at that time one of the princes of the host of Nimrod. And when all the people at the tower were dispersed, and those that remained there were also scattered upon the face of the earth, Kedorlaomer went to the land of Elam and reigned over it and rebelled against this Lord. And in those days, when Nimrod saw that the cities of the circle of the Yarden had rebelled, he came with pride and anger to war with Kedorlaomer And Nimrod assembled all his princes and subjects, about 700,000 men, and went against Kedorlaomer. And Kedorlaomer went out to meet him with 5,000 men, and they prepared for battle in the valley of Babel, which is between Elam and Shinar. And all those kings fought there, and Nimrod and his people were smitten before the people of Kedorlaomer, and there fell from Nimrod's men about 600,000, and Mardan, the king's son, fell amongst them. And Nimrod fell and returned in shame and disgrace to his land. And he was under subjection to Kedorlaomer for a long time. And Kedorlaomer returned to his land and sent princes of hosts to the king that dwelt around them, and Arioch, king of Elachar, and to Tidal, king of nations, and cut a covenant with them. And they were all obedient to his commands. And it was in the 15th year of Abram's dwelling in the land of Canaan, which is the 7th year of the life of Abram. And Yahuwah appeared to Abram in that year, and he said to him, I am Yahuwah who brought you out from Ur-Kasdim to give you this land for an inheritance. Now, therefore, walk before me and be perfect and guard my commandments. For to you and to your seed, I will give you this land for an inheritance, from the river Mitzrayim and to the river Parah. And you shall come to your fathers in peace and in good age, and the 4th generation shall return here in this land and shall inherit it forever. And Abram built an altar, and he called upon the name of Yahuwah, who appeared to him, and he brought up sacrifices upon the altar to Yahuwah. At that time, Abram returned and went to Haran to see his father and mother and his father's household. And Abram and his woman and all belonging to him returned to Haran. And Abram dwelt in Haran 5 years. And many of the people of Haran, about 72 men, followed Abram. And Abram taught them the instruction of Yahuwah and his ways. And he taught them to know Yahuwah. In those days, Yahuwah appeared to Abram in Haran, and he said to him, Behold, I spoke unto you these 20 years back, saying, Go forth from your land, from your birthplace, and from your father's house to the land which I have shown you, to give it to you and to your children, for there in the land I will bless you and make you a great nation, and make your name great, and in you shall the families of the earth be blessed. Now therefore, arise and go from this place, you, your woman, and all your belongings to you, also everyone born in your house, and all the souls you have made in Haran, and bring them out with you from here, and rise to return to the land of Canaan. And Abram arose and took his woman Sarai, and all belonging to him, and all that were born to him in his house, and the souls which they had made in Haran. And they came out to go to the land of Canaan. And Abram went and returned to the land of Canaan, according to the word of Yahuwah. And Lot, the son of his brother Haran, went with him. And Abram was 75 years old when he went forth from Haran to return to the land of Canaan. And he came to the land of Canaan according to the word of Yahuwah to Abram. And he pitched his tent, and he dwelled in the plain of Mamre. And with him was Lot, his brother's son, and all belonging to him. And Yahuwah again appeared to Abram and said, To your seed will I give you this land. And he there built an altar to Yahuwah, who appeared to him, which is still to this day in the plains of Mamre. In those days there was in the land of Shinar a wise man who had understanding in all wisdom and of beautiful appearance, but he was poor and indigent. His name was Riakan, and he was hard set to support himself, and he resolved to go to Mitzrayim, to Oswiris, the son of Anamim, king of Mitzrayim, to show the king his wisdom, for perhaps he might find grace in the sight to raise him up and give him maintenance. And Rikayon did so. And when Rikayon came to Mitzrayim, he asked the inhabitants of Mitzrayim concerning the king. And the inhabitants of Mitzrayim told him the custom of the king of Mitzrayim, for it was then the custom of the king of Mitzrayim that he went from his royal palace and was seen abroad only one day in the year. And after that, the king would return to his palace to remain there. And on the day when the king went forth, he passed judgment in the land, and everyone having a suit came before the king that day to obtain his request. And Rikayon heard of the custom in Mitzrayim, that he could not come into the presence of the king. He grieved greatly and was very sorrowful. And in the evening, Rikayon went out and found a house in ruins, formerly a bakehouse of Mitzrayim, and he abode there all night in bitterness of soul and pinched with hunger, and sleep was removed from his eyes. And Rikayon considered within himself what he should do in the town until the king made his appearance, and how he might maintain himself there. And he rose in the morning and walked about and met in his way those who sold vegetables and various sorts of seeds with which they supplied the inhabitants. And Rikayon wished to do the same in order to get a maintenance in the city, but he was unacquainted with the custom of the people, and he was like a blind man among them. And he went and obtained vegetables to sell them for his support. And the rabble assembled about him and ridiculed him, and took his vegetables from him, and left him nothing. And he rose up from there in bitterness of soul, and went sighing to the bakehouse in which he had remained all the night before. And he slept there the second night. And on that night again, he reasoned with himself how he could save himself from starvation, and he devised a scheme how to act. And he rose up in the morning and acted ingenuously, and he went and hired 30 strong men of the rabble, carrying their war instruments in their hand, and he led them to the top of Mitzrayim's sculpture, and he placed them there, and he commanded them, saying, Thus says the king, strengthen yourselves and be valiant men, and let no man be buried there until 200 pieces of silver be given, and then he may be buried. And those men did according to the order of Rikayon to the people of Mitzrayim the whole of that year. And in 8 months' time, Rikayon and his men gathered great riches of silver and gold. And Rikayon took a great quantity of horses and other animals, and he hired more men, and he gave them horses, and they remained with him. And when the year came round, at the time the king went forth into the town, all the inhabitants of Mitzrayim assembled together to speak to him concerning the work of Rikayon and his men. And the king went forth on the appointed day, and all Mitzrayim came before him and cried unto him, saying, May the king live forever. What is this thing you do to us in the town to your servants, not to suffer a dead body to be buried until so much silver and gold be given? Was there ever the like unto this done unto the whole earth from the days of former kings, yea, even from the days of Adam unto his day, that this dead should not be buried only for a set price? We know it to be the custom of kings to take a yearly tax from the living, but you do not only do this, but from the dead also you exact a tax day by day. Now, O king, we can no more bear this, for the whole city is ruined on account, and do you not know it? And when the king heard all this they had spoke, he was very wroth, and his anger burned within him at this affair, for he had known nothing of it. And the king said, Who and where is he that dares to do this wicked thing in my land without my command? Surely you will tell me. And they told him all the works of Rikayon and his men, and the king's anger was aroused, and he ordered Rikayon and his men to be brought before him. And Rikayon took about 1,000 children, sons and daughters, and clothed them in silk and embroidery. And he set them upon horses and set them to the king by means of his men. And he also took a great quantity of silver and gold and precious stones and a strong and beautiful horse as a present for the king, with which he came before the king and bowed down to the earth before him. And the king and his servants and all the inhabitants of Mitzrayim wondered at the work of Rikayon. And they saw his riches, the present that he had brought to the king, and it greatly pleased the king, and he wondered at it. And when Rikayon sat before him, the king asked him concerning all his works. And Rikayon spoke all his words wisely before the king, his servants, and all the inhabitants of Mitzrayim. And when the king heard the words of Rikayon and his wisdom, Rikayon found grace in his sight, and he met with grace and kindness from all the servants of the king and from all the inhabitants of Mitzrayim on account of his wisdom and excellent speeches. And from that time they loved him exceedingly. And the king answered and said to Rikayon, "Your name shall no more be called Rikayon, but Pharaoh shall be your name, since you did exact a tax from the dead." And he called his name Pharaoh. And the king and his subjects loved Rikayon for his wisdom, and they consulted with all the inhabitants of Mitzrayim to make him perfect under the king. And all the inhabitants of Mitzrayim and its wise men did so, and it was made a law in Mitzrayim. And they made Rikayon Pharaoh perfect under Ahasuerus, king of Mitzrayim, and Rikayon Pharaoh governed over Mitzrayim, daily administrating justice to the whole city. But Ahasuerus the king would judge the people of the land one day in the year when he went out to make his appearance. And Rikayon Pharaoh cunningly unsurpassed the government of Mitzrayim, and he exacted a tax from all the inhabitants of Mitzrayim. And all the inhabitants of Mitzrayim greatly loved Rikayon Pharaoh, and they made a decree to call every king that should reign over them and their seed in Mitzrayim Pharaoh. Therefore, all the kings that reigned in Mitzrayim from that time forward were called Pharaoh unto this day. And in that year there was a heavy famine throughout the land of Canaan, and in the inhabitants of the land could not remain on account of the famine, for it was very grievous. And Abram and all that belonged to him rose and went down to Mitzrayim on account of the famine. And when they were at the brook Mitzrayim, they remained there some time to rest from the fatigue of the road. And Abram and Sarah were walking at the border of the brook Mitzrayim, and Abram held his woman Sarai, that she was very beautiful. And Abram said to his woman Sarai, "Since Elohim has created you with such beautiful countenance, I am afraid of the Mitzrayim, lest they should slay me and take you away. For the fear of Elohim is not in these places. Surely then you shall do this, say, you are my sister, to all that may ask you, in order that it may be well with me, and that we may live and not be put to death." And Abram commanded the same to do all those that came with them to Mitzrayim on account of the famine. Also his nephew Lot he commanded, saying, "If Mitzrayim asks you concerning Sarai, say, she is the sister of Abram." And yet with all these orders, Abram did not put confidence in them, but he took Sarai and placed her in a chest and concealed it amongst their vessels. For Abram was greatly concerned about Sarai on account of the wickedness of Mitzrayim. And Abram and all belongings to him rose up from the brook Mitzrayim and came to Mitzrayim, and they had scarcely entered the gates of the city when the guard stood up to them, saying, "Give tithe to the king from what you have, and then you may come into the town." And Abram and those that were with him did so. And Abram, with the people that were with him, came to Mitzrayim. And when they came, they brought the chest in which Sarai was concealed. And the Mitzrayim saw the chest. And the king's servant approached Abram, saying, "What have you there in this chest which we have not seen? Now open your chest and give the tithe to the king of all that it contains." And Abram said, "This chest I will not open, but all you demand upon it I will give." And Pharaoh's officers answered Abram, saying, "It is a chest of precious stones. Give us a tenth, therefore." Abram said, "All that you desire I will give, but you must not open the chest." And the king's officers pressed Abram, and they reached the chest and opened it with force. And they saw, and behold, a beautiful woman was in the chest. And when the officers of the king beheld Sarai, they were struck with admiration at her beauty. And all the princes and servants of Pharaoh assembled to see Sarai, for she was very beautiful. And the king's officers ran and told Pharaoh all that they had seen, and they pressed Sarai to the king. And Pharaoh ordered her to be brought, and the woman came before the king. And Pharaoh beheld Sarai, and she pleased him exceedingly, and he was struck with her beauty. And the king rejoiced greatly on her account, and made presents to those who brought him the tidings concerning her. And the woman was then brought to Pharaoh's house, and Abram grieved on account of his woman, and he prayed to Yahweh to deliver her from the hands of Pharaoh. And Sarai also prayed at that time and said, "O Yahweh Elohim, you did tell my lord Abram to go from this land and from his father's house to the land of Canaan, and you did promise to do well with him if he would perform your commands. Now, behold, we have done that which you did command us, and we left our land and our families, and we went to a strange land and to a people whom we have not known before. And we came to this land to avoid the famine, and to this evil accident has befallen me. Now, therefore, O Yahweh Elohim, deliver us and save us from the hand of the oppressor, and do well with me for the sake of your mercy." And Yahweh hearkened to the voice of Sarai, and Yahweh sent an angel to deliver Sarai from the power of Pharaoh. And the king who came and sat before Sarai, and behold, an angel of Yahweh was standing over them. And he appeared to Sarai and said to her, "Do not fear, for Yahweh has heard your prayer." And the king approached Sarai and said to her, "What is that man to whom brought you hither?" And she said, "He is my brother." And the king said, "It is incumbent upon us to make him great, to elevate him, and to do unto him all the good which you shall command us." And at that time the king sent to Abram silver and gold and precious stones in abundance, together with cattle, men servants, maid servants. And the king ordered Abram to be brought, and he sat in the court of the king's house. And the king greatly exalted Abram on that night. And the king approached to speak to Sarai, and he reached out his hand to touch her, when the angel smote him heavily, and he was terrified, and he refrained from reaching to her. And when the king came near to Sarai, the angel smote him to the ground, and acted thus to him the whole night, and the king was terrified. And the angel on that night smote heavily all the servants of the king, and his whole household, on account of Sarai. And there was a great lamentation that night amongst the people of Pharaoh's house. And Pharaoh, seeing the evil that befell him, said, "Surely on account of this woman has a thing happened to me." And he removed himself at some distance from her and spoke pleasing words to her. And the king said to Sarai, Tell me, I pray you, concerning the man with whom you came here. And Sarai said, This is my man. And I said to you that he was my brother, for I was afraid lest you should put him to death through wickedness. And the king kept away from Sarai, and the plagues of the angel of Yahweh ceased from him and his household. And Pharaoh knew that he was smitten on account of Sarai, and the king was greatly astonished at this. And in the morning the king called for Abram and said to him, What is this you have done to me? Why did you say, She is my sister, owing to which I took her unto me to be my woman, and this heavy plague has therefore come upon me and my household? Now therefore, here is your woman. Take her and go from our land, lest we all die on her account. And Pharaoh took more cattle, maidservants, men servants, and silver and gold to give to Abram. And he returned unto Sarai his woman. And the king took a maiden whom he begat by his incubness, and he gave her to Sarai for a handmaid. And the king said to his daughter, It is better for you, my daughter, to be a handmaid in this man's house than to be a mistress in my house. After we have beheld the evil that befell us on account of this woman. And Abram arose, and he and all belonging to him went away from Mitzrayim, and Pharaoh ordered some of his men to accompany him, and all that went with him. And Abram returned to the land of Canaan, to the place where he had made the altar, where he at first had pitched his tent. And Lot, the son of Haran, Abram's brother, had a heavy stock of cattle, flocks, and herds of tents, for Yahuwah was bountiful to them on account of Abram. And when Abram was dwelling in the land, the herdsmen of Lot quarreled with the herdsmen of Abram, for their property was too great for them to remain together in the land, and the land could not bear them on account of their cattle. And when Abram's herdsmen went to feed their flock, they would not go to the field of the people of the land, but the cattle of Lot's herdsmen did otherwise, for they were suffered to feed in the fields of the people of the land. And the people of the land saw the occurrences daily, and they came to Abram and quarreled with him on account of Lot's herdsmen. And Abram said to Lot, What is this you are doing to me, to make me despicable to the inhabitants of the land, that you order your herdsmen to feed your cattle in the fields of other people? Do you not know that I am a stranger in this land amongst the children of Canaan? And why will you do this unto me? And Abram quarreled daily with Lot on account of this, but Lot would not listen to Abram, and he continued to do the same. And the inhabitants of the land came and told Abram. And Abram said to Lot, How long will you be to me for a stumbling block with the inhabitants of the land? Now, I beseech you, let there be no quarreling between us, for we are kinsmen. But I pray you, separate from me, go and choose a place where you may dwell with your cattle and all belongings to you, but keep yourself at a distance from me, you and your household. And be not afraid in going from me, for if anyone do an injury to you, let me know, and I will avenge your cause from him. Only remove from me. And when Abram had spoken all these words to Lot, then Lot arose and lifted up his eyes towards the plains of the Yarden. And he saw that the whole of this place was well watered, a good for man as well as affording pasture for the cattle. And Lot went from Abram to that place, and he there pitched his tent and dwelt in Sedom, and they were separated from each other. And Abram dwelt in the plain of Mamre, which is in Hebron, and he pitched his tent there, and Abram remained in the place many years. At the time Kedorlaomer, king of Elam, sent to all the neighboring kings, to Nimrod, king of Shinar, who was then under his power, and to Tadel, king of nations, and to Arioch, king of Elakar, with whom he cut a covenant, saying, "Come up to me and assist me, that we may smite all the towns of Senum and its inhabitants, for they rebelled against me these 13 years, and these 4 kings went up with all their camps, about 800,000 men, and they went as they were, and smote every man they found on the road. And the 5 kings of Sedom and Amorah, Shinab, king of Admah, Shem-ever, king of Tesavim, Bara, king of Sedom, Bersha, king of Amorah, and Bela, king of Tesoar, went out to meet them, and they all joined together in the valley of Siddim. And these 9 kings made war with the valley of Siddim, and the kings of Sedom and Amorah were smitten before the kings of Elam. And the kings of Sedom was full of lime pits, and the kings of Elam pursued the kings of Sedom. And the kings of Sedom with their camps fled and fell into the lime pits, and all that remained went to the mountain for safety. And the 5 kings of Elam came after them and pursued them to the gates of Sedom. And they took all that there was in Sedom, and they plundered all the cities of Sedom and Amorah, and they also took Lot, Abram's brother's son, and his property, and they seized all the goods of the cities of Sedom. And they went away, and Eunuch, Abram's servant who was in the battle, saw this and told Abram all that the kings had done to the cities of Sedom, and that Lot was taken captive by them. And Abram heard this, and he rose up about 318 men that were with him, and he that night pursued these kings and smote them, and they all fell before Abram and his men, and there was none remaining but the 4 kings who fled, and they went each his own road. And Abram recovered all the property of Sedom, and he also recovered Lot and his property, his woman and little ones, and all belonging to him, so that Lot lacked nothing. And when he returned from smiting these kings, he and his men passed the valley of Siddim, where the king had made war together, and Bara, king of Sedom, and the rest of his men that were with him went out from the lime pits into which they had fallen to meet Abram and his men. And Adonai Tesadek, king of Jerusalem, the same was Shem, went out with his men to meet Abram and his people with bread and wine, and they remained together in the valley of Melech. And Adonai Tesadek blessed Abram, and Abram gave him 1/10 from all that he had brought from the spoil of his enemies, for Adonai Tesadek was a priest before Elohim. And all the kings of Sidon and Amorah who were there with their servants approached Abram and begged of him to return them their servants whom he had made captive, and to take unto himself all the property. And Abram answered the kings of Sodom, saying, As Yahweh lives, who created heaven and earth, and who redeemed my soul from affliction, and who delivered me this day from my enemies, and gave them into my hand, I will not take anything belonging to you, that you may not boast tomorrow, saying, Abram became rich from property that he saved. For Yahuwah Elohai, in whom I trust, said to me, You shall lack nothing, for I will bless you in all the works of your hands. And now, therefore, behold, here is a belonging to you. Take it and go. As Yahweh lives, I will not take from you, from a living soul, down to a shoe tie or thread, excepting the expense of food of those who went out with me into battle, as also the portions of men who went with me, Anar, Eshcol, Mamre, they and their men, as well as those who had remained to watch the baggage, they shall take their portion of the spoil. And the kings of Sodom gave Abraham according to all that he had said, and they pressed him to take of whatsoever he chose, but he would not. And he sent away the kings of Sodom and the remainder of their men, and he gave them orders about Lot, and they went to their respective places. And Lot, his brother's son, he also sent away with his property, and he went with them. And Lot returned to his home to Sodom, and Abram and his people returned to their home to the plains of Mamre, which is in Hebron. At that time, Yahweh again appeared to Abram and Hebron, and he said to him, "Do not fear, your reward is very great before me, for I will not leave you until I shall have multiplied you and blessed you and made your seed like the stars in heaven, which cannot be measured nor numbered. And I will give unto your seed all these lands that you see with your eyes. To them I will give them for an inheritance forever. Only be strong and do not fear. Walk before me and be perfect." And in 78 year of the life of Abraham, in that year died Reu, the son of Peleg. And all the days of Reu were 239 years, and he died. And Sarai, the daughter of Haran, Abram's woman, was still barren in those days. She did not bear to Abram either son or daughter. And when she saw that she bore no children, she took her handmaiden Hagar, whom Pharaoh had given her, and she gave her to Abram for her man for a woman. For Hagar learned all the ways of Sarai, and Sarai taught her. She was not in any way deficient in following her good ways. And Sarai said to Abram, "Behold, here is my handmaiden Hagar. Go to her, that she may bring forth upon my knees, that I may also obtain children through her." And at the end of 10 years of Abraham's dwelling in the land of Canaan, which is 85th year of Abraham's life, Sarai gave Hagar unto him. And Abram hearkened to the voice of his woman Sarai, and he took his handmaiden Hagar, and Abram came to her, and she conceived. And when Hagar saw that she had conceived, she rejoiced greatly, and her mistress was despised in her eyes. And she said within herself, "This can only be that I am better before Elohim than Sarai, my mistress. For all the days that my mistress has been with my Lord, she did not conceive. But me, Yahweh, has caused in so short a time to conceive by him." And when Sarai saw that Hagar had conceived by Abram, Sarai was jealous of her handmaid. And Sarai said within herself, "This is surely nothing else but that she must be better than I am." And Sarai said to Abram, "My wrong be upon you for the time when you did pray before Yahweh for children. Why did you not pray on my account, that Yahweh should give me seed from you? And when I speak to Hagar in your presence, she despises my words, because she has conceived, and you will say nothing to her. May Yahweh judge between me and you for what you have done to me." And Abram said to Sarai, "Behold, your handmaid is in your hand. Do unto her as it may seem good in your eyes." And Sarai afflicted her, and Hagar fled from her to the wilderness. And an angel of Yahweh found her in the place where she had fled by the well, and he said to her, "Do not fear, for I will multiply your seed, for you shall bear a son, and you shall call his name Yishmael. Now then, return to Sarah your mistress, and submit yourself under her hands." And Hagar called the place of that well Be'er Lahai Roi. It is between Kadesh and the wilderness of Bered. And Hagar at that time returned to her master's house. And at the end of days, Hagar bore a son to Abraham. And Abraham called his name Yishmael. And Abraham was 86 years old when he begat him. And in those days, in the 91st year of the life of Abram, the children of Kittim made war with the children of Tubal, For when Yahuwah had scattered the sons of men upon the face of the earth, the children of Kittim went and embodied themselves in the plain of Canopia, and they built themselves cities there and dwelt by the river Tebriu. And the children of Tubal went to Tuscana, and their boundaries reached the river of Tiberu. And the children of Tubal built a city in Tuscanan, and they called the name Sibana, after the name of Sibana, son of Tubal, their father, and they dwelt there unto this day. And it was at the time the children Kittim made war with the children of Tubal, and the children of Tubal were smitten before the children of Kittim. And the children of Kittim caused 370 men to fall from the children of Tubal. And at that time the children of Tubal swore to the children of Kittim, saying, You shall not intermarry among us, and no man shall give his daughter to any of the sons of Kittim. For all the daughters of Tubal were in those days fair, for no women were then found in the whole earth so fair as the daughters of Tubal. And all who delighted in the beauty of women went to the daughters of Tubal and took women from them. And the sons of men, kings and princes, who greatly delighted in the beauty of women, took women in those days from the daughters of Tubal. And at the end of 3 years, after the children of Tubal had sworn to the children of Kittim not to give them their daughters for women, about 20 men of the children of Kittim went to take some of the daughters of Tubal, but they found none. For the children of Tubal kept their oaths not to intermarry with them, and they would not break their oaths. And in the days of harvest, the children of Tubal went unto their fields to get into their harvest when the young men of Kittim assembled and went to the city of Sabina, and each man took a young woman from the daughters of Tubal, and they came to their cities. And the children of Tubal heard of it, and they went to make war with them, and they could not prevail over them, for the mountain was exceedingly high from them. And when they saw they could not prevail over them, they returned to their land. And at the revolution of the year of the children of Tubal went and hired about 10,000 men from those cities that were near them. And they went to war with the children of Kittim. And the children of Tubal went to war with the children of Kittim to destroy their land and to distress them. And in this engagement, the children of Tubal prevailed over the children of Kittim. And the children of Kittim, seeing that they were greatly distressed, lifted up the children which they had by their daughters of Tubal upon the wall which had been built to be before the eyes of the children of Tubal. And the children of Kittim said to them, Have you come to make war with your own sons and daughters, and have we not been considered your flesh and bone from that time until now? And when the children of Tubal heard this, they ceased to make war with the children of Kittim, and they went away, and they returned to their cities. And the children of Kittim at that time assembled and built 2 cities by the sea, and they called one Pertu and the other Ariza. And Abram, the son of Terah, was then 99 years old. At that time, Yahuwah appeared to him, and he said to him, I will make my covenant between me and you, and I will greatly multiply your seed. And this is the covenant which I make between me and you, that every male child be circumcised, you and your seed after you. At 8 days old shall it be circumcised, and this covenant shall be your flesh for an everlasting covenant. And now, therefore, your name shall no more be called Abram, but Abraham, and your woman shall no more be called Sarai, but Sarah, for I will bless you both, and I will multiply your seed after you, that you shall become a great nation, and kings shall come forth from you. And Abram arose and did all that Elohim had ordered him. And he took the men of his household and those bought with his money, and he circumcised them as Yahweh had commanded him. And there was not one left whom he did not circumcise. And Abram and his son Ishmael were circumcised in the flesh of their foreskin. 13-year-old was Ishmael when he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin. And in the third day, Abram went out of his tent and sat at the door to enjoy the heat of the sun during the pain of his flesh. And Yahuwah appeared to him in the plain of Mamre, and sent 3 of his ministering angels to visit him. And he was sitting at the door of the tent, and he lifted his eyes and saw, and lo, 3 men were coming from the distance. And he rose up and ran to meet them. And he bowed down to them and brought them into his house. And he said to them, "If now I have found favor in your sight, turn in and eat a morsel of bread." And he pressed them, and they turned in, and he gave them water, and they washed their feet, and he placed them under a tree at the door of the tent. And Abram ran and took a calf, tender and good, and he hastened to kill it, and gave it to his servant Eliezer to dress. And Abram came to Sarah into the tent and said to her, "Make ready quickly 3 measures of fine meal, knead it, and make cakes to cover the pot containing the meat." And she did so. And Abram hastened and brought her before them butter and milk, beef and mutton, and gave it before them to eat before the flesh of the calf was sufficiently done. And they did eat. And when they had done eating, one of them said to him, "I will return to you according to the time of life, and Sarah your woman shall have a son." And the men afterward departed and went their ways to the places to which they were sent. And in those days all the people of Sodom and Amorah and of the whole 5 cities were exceedingly wicked and sinful against Yahuwah. And they provoked Yahuwah with their abominations, and they strengthened in aging abominably and scornfully before Yahuwah. And their wickedness and crimes were in those days great before Yahuwah. And they had in their land a very extensive valley, about half a day's walk. And in it there were fountains of waters and a great deal of herbage surrounding the water. And all the people of Sodom and Amorah went there 4 times in the year with their women and children and all belongings to them. And they rejoiced there with timbrels and dances. And in the time of rejoicing, they would all rise and lay hold of their neighbor's woman, and some the virgin daughters of their neighbors, and they enjoyed them. And each man saw his woman and daughter in the hands of his neighbor, and did not say a word. And they did so from morning to night. And they afterward returned home, each man to his house, and each woman to her tent. So they always did 4 times in the year. Also, when a stranger came into their city and brought goods which he had purchased with a view to dispose of the people of these cities would assemble men, women, and children, young and old, and go to the man and take his goods by force, giving a little to each man until there was an end to all the goods of the owner which he had brought into the land. And if the owner of the goods quarreled with them, saying, "What is this work which you have done to me?" then they would approach to him one by one, and each would show him a little which he took, and taught him, saying, "I only took that little which you did give me." And when he heard this from them all, he would arise and go from them in sorrow and bitterness of soul. When they would all arise and go after him and drive him out of the city with great noise and tumult. And there was a man from the country of Elam who was leisurely going on the road, and seated upon his ass, which carried a fine mantle of diverse colors, and the mantle was bound with a cord upon the ass. And the man was on his journey, passing through the street of Sidon, when the sun set in the evening, and he remained there in order to abide during the night. But no one would let him into his house, and at that time there was in Sidon a wicked and mischievous man, one skillful to do evil, and his name was Hadad. And he lifted up his eyes and saw the traveler in the city, in the street of the city, and he came to him and said, "Whence come you, and whither do you go?" And the man said to him, "I am traveling from Hebron to Elim, where I belong, and as I passed, the sun set, and no one would suffer me to enter his house, though I had bread and water, and also straw and provender for my ass, and I am short of nothing." And Hadad answered and said to him, "All that you shall want shall be supplied by me, but in the street you shall not abide all night." And Hadad brought him to his house, and took off the mantle from the ass with the cord, and brought them to his house. And he gave the ass straw and provender, while the traveler ate and drank in Hadad's house. And he abode there that night. And in the morning the traveler rose up early to continue his journey, when Hadad said to him, "Wait, comfort your heart with a morsel of bread, and then go." And the man did so, and he remained with them, and they both ate and drank together during the day when the man rose up to go. And Hadad said to him, "Behold now, the day is declining. You had better remain all night, that your heart may be comforted." And he pressed him, so that he tarried there all night. And on the second day he rose up early to go away, when Hadad pressed him, saying, "Comfort your heart with a morsel of bread, and then go." And he remained and ate with him also the second day. And then the man rose up to continue his journey. And Hadad said to him, "Behold, now the day is declining. Remain with me to comfort your heart, and in the morning rise up early and go your way." And the man would not remain, but rose and saddled his ass. And while he was saddling his ass, the woman of Hadad said to her man, "Behold, this man has remained with us for 2 days, eating and drinking, and he has given us nothing. And now shall he go away from us without giving anything?" And Hadad said to her, "Be silent." And the man saddled his ass to go, and he asked Hadad to give him the cord and mantle to tie it upon the ass. And Hadad said to him, "What say you?" And he said to him, "That you, my lord, shall give me the cord and mantle made with diverse colors, which you did conceal with you in your house, to take care of it." And Hadad answered the man, saying, "This is the interpretation of your dream. The cord which you did see means that your life will be lengthened out like a cord, and having seen the mantle colored with all sorts of colors means that you shall have a vineyard in which you will plant trees of all fruits." And the traveler answered, saying, "Not so, my lord, for I was awake when I gave you the cord, and also a mantle woven with different colors, which you did take of the ass to put them by for me." And Hadad answered and said, "Surely I have told you the interpretation of your dream, and it is a good dream, and this is the interpretation thereof. Now the sons of men give me 4 pieces of silver, which is my charge for interpreting dreams, and of you only I require 3 pieces of silver." And the man was provoked at the words of Hadad, and he cried bitterly, and he brought Hadad to Sirach, judge of Sidon. And the man laid his cause before Sirach, the judge, when Hadad replied, saying, "It is not so, but thus the matter stands." And the judge said to the traveler, "This man Hadad tells you truth, for he is famed in the cities for the accurate interpretation of dreams." And the man cried at the word of the judge, and he said, "Not so, my lord, for it was in that day that I gave him the cord, the mantle, which was upon the ass, in order to put them by in his house." And they both disputed before the judge, the one saying, "Thus the matter was," and the other declaring otherwise. And Hadad said to the man, Give me 4 pieces of silver. I charge for my interpretations of the dreams. I will not make any allowance, and give me the expense of the 4 meals that you did eat in my house. And the man said to Hadad, Truly, I will pay you for what I ate in your house. Only give me the cord and mantle which you did conceal in your house. And Hadad replied before the judge and said to the man, Did I not tell you that the interpretation of your dream, the cord, means that your days shall be prolonged like a cord, and the mantle, that you will have a vineyard in which you will plant all kinds of fruit trees? This is the proper interpretation of your dream. Now give me the 4 pieces of silver that I require as compensation, for I will make you no allowance. And the man cried at the words of Hadad, and they both quarreled before the judge. And the judge gave orders to his servants, who drove them rashly from the house. And they went away quarreling from the judge. When the people of Sodom heard them, they gathered about them, and they exclaimed against the stranger, and they drove him rashly from the city. And the man continued his journey upon his ass with bitterness of soul, lamenting and weeping. And while he was going along, he wept at what had happened to him in the corrupt city of Sodom. And the cities of Sodom had 4 judges to 4 cities, and these were their names: Sirach and the city of Sodom, Sarkad and Amorah, Yavnad and Admah, Minon and Tesavim. And Eleazar, Abraham's servant, applied to them different names, and he converted Sirach to Sakra, Sharkad to Shakrua, Shebna to Kezovim, and Minon to Matzlonidin. And by desire of 4 judges, the people of Sodom and Amorah had beds erected in the streets of the city. And if a man came to these places, they laid hold of him and brought him to one of their beds, and by force made him to lie in them. And as he lay down, 3 men would stand at his head and 3 at his feet, and measure him by the length of the bed. And if the man was less than the bed, these 6 men would stretch him at each end. And when he cried out to them, they would not answer him. And if he was longer than the bed, they would draw together the 2 sides of the bed at each end until the man had reached the gates of death. And if he continued to cry out to them, they would answer him, saying, Thus shall it be done to a man that comes into our land. And when men heard all these things that the people of the cities of Sodom did, they refrained from coming there. And when a poor man came to their land, they would give him silver and gold, and cause a proclamation in the whole city not to give him a morsel of bread to eat. And if the stranger should remain there some days and die from hunger, not having been able to obtain a morsel of bread, then at his death, all the people of the city would come and take their silver and gold, which they had given to him. And those that could recognize the silver or gold which they had given to him took it back. And at his death, they also stripped him of his garments, and they would fight about him. And he prevailed over his neighbor, took them, and they would after that carry him and bury him under some of the shrubs in the desert. So they did all the days to anyone that came to them, and died in their land. And in the course of time, Sarah sent Eleazar to Sidon to see Lot and inquire after his welfare. And Eleazar went to Sidon, and he met a man of Sidon fighting with a stranger, and a man of Sidon stripped the poor man of all his clothes and went away. And his poor man cried to Eleazar and supplicated his favor on account of what the man Sidon had done to him. And he said to him, Why do you act thus to the poor man who came to your land? And the man of Sidon answered Eleazar, saying, Is this man your brother, or have the people of Sidon made you a judge this day, that you speak about this man? And Eleazar strove with the man of Sidon on account of the poor man. And when Eleazar approached to recover the poor man's clothes from the man of Sidon, he hastened and with a stone smote Eleazar in the forehead. And the blood flowed copiously from Eleazar's forehead. And when the man saw the blood, he caught hold of Eleazar, saying, Give me my hire for having rid you of this bad blood that was in your forehead, for such is the custom and the law of our land. And Eleazar said to him, You have wounded me and require me to pay you your hire. And Eleazar would not hearken to the words of the man of Sidon. And the man laid hold of Eleazar and brought him to Shakra, the judge of Sidon, for judgment. And the man spoke to the judge, saying, I beseech this man done, for I smote him with a stone that the blood flowed from his forehead, and he is unwilling to give me my hire. And the judge said to Eleazar, This man speaks truth to you. Give him his hire, for this is the custom in our land. And Eleazar heard the words of the judge, and he lifted up a stone and smote the judge. And the stone struck on his forehead, and the blood flowed copiously from the forehead of the judge. And Eleazar said, If this then is the custom in your land to give you unto this man what I should have given him, for this has been your decision, you did decree it. And Eleazar left the man of Sidon with the judge and went away. And when the king of Elam had made war with the kings of Sidon, the kings of Elam captured all the property of Sidon, and they took Lot captive with his property. And when it was told to Abram, he went and made war with the kings of Elam, and he recovered from their hands all the property of Lot, as well as the property of Sidon. At that time, the woman of Lot bore him a daughter, and he called her name Peltith, saying, Because Elohim had delivered him and his whole household from the kings of Elam. Peltith, daughter of Lot, grew up, and one of the men of Sidon took her for a woman. And a poor man came unto the city to seek a maintenance, and he remained in the city some days. And all the people of Sidon caused a proclamation of their custom not to give this man a morsel of bread to eat until he dropped dead upon the earth. And they did so. And Paltai, the daughter of Lot, saw this man laying in the street, starved with hunger, and no one would give him anything to keep him alive, and he was just upon the point of death. And her soul was filled with pity on account of the man, and she fed him secretly with bread for many days, and the soul of this man was revived. For when she went forth to fetch water, she would put the bread in the water pitcher, and when she came to the place where the poor man was, she took the bread from the pitcher and gave it to him to eat. So she did many days. And all the people of Sidon and Amorah wondered how this man could bear starvation for so many days. And they said to each other, This can only be that he eats and drinks, for no man can bear starvation for so many days or live as this man has without even countenance changing. And 3 men concealed themselves in a place where the poor man was stationed to know who it was that brought him bread to eat. And Paltai, daughter of Lot, went forth that day to fetch water, and she put bread into a pitcher of water, and she went to draw water by the poor man's place, and she took out the bread from the pitcher and gave it to the poor man, and he ate it. And the 3 men saw that Paltai did to the poor man, and they said to her, It is you then who has supported him, and therefore he has not starved, nor changed in appearance, nor died like the rest. And the 3 men went out of the place in which they were concealed, and they seized Paltai and the bread which was in the poor man's hand. And they took Paltai and brought her before the judges, and they said to them, Thus did she do, and it is she who supplied the poor man with bread. Therefore did not die all this time. Now therefore declare to us the punishment due to this woman for having transgressed our law. And the people of Sidom and Amorah assembled and kindled a fire in the street of the city. And they took the woman and cast her into the fire, and she was burned to ashes. And in the city of Admah there was a woman to whom they did the like. For a traveler came into the city of Admah to abide there all night, with the intention of going home in the morning. And she sat opposite the door of the house of the young woman's father, to remain there, as the sun had set when he had reached that place. And the young woman saw him sitting by the door of the house. And she asked her for a drink of water. And she said to him, "Who are you?" And he said to her, "I was this day going on the road, and reached here when the sun set. So I will abide here all night. And in the morning I will arise early and continue on my journey." And the young woman went into the house and fetched the man bread and water to eat and drink. And this affair became known to the people of Admah. And they assembled and brought the young woman before the judges, that they should judge her for this act. And the judge said, "The judgment of death must be passed upon this woman, because she transgressed her law, and this, therefore, is the decision concerning her." And the people of those cities assembled and brought out the young woman and anointed her with honey from head to foot, as the judge had decreed. And they placed her before a swarm of bees, which were in their hive, and the bees flew upon her and stung her, that her whole body was swelled. And the young woman cried out on account of the bees, but no one took notice of her or pitied her, and her cries ascended to heaven. And Yahuwah was provoked at this, and all the works of the cities of Sidom, for they had abundance of food, and had tranquility amongst them, and still would not sustain the poor and the needy in those days, and their evil doings and sin become great before Yahuwah. And Yahuwah sent for two of the angels that had come to Abram's house to destroy Sedom and its cities. And the angels rose up from the door of Abram's tent after they had eaten and drunk, and they reached Sedom in the evening. And Lot was then sitting at the gate of Sedom. And when he saw them, he rose to meet them, and he bowed down to the ground. And he pressed them greatly, and brought them into his house. And he gave them victuals, which they ate, and they abode all night in his house. And the angel said to Lot, "Arise and go forth from this place, you and all belongings to you, lest ye be consumed in the iniquity of the city, for Yahweh will destroy this place." And the angels laid hold upon the hand of Lot, and upon the hand of his woman, and upon the hands of his children, and all belonging to him. And they brought him forth, and set him without the cities. And they said to Lot, "Escape for your life." And he fled, and all belongings to him. Then Yahuwah rained upon Sedom, and upon Amorah, and upon all these cities, brimstone and fire from Yahuwah out of heaven. And he overthrew these cities, and all the circle of the Yarden, and all inhabitants of the cities, and that which grew upon the ground. And Adu, the woman of Lot, looked back to see the destruction of the cities, for her compassion was moved on account of her daughters who remained in Sedom, for they did not go with her. And when she looked back, she became a pillar of salt. And it is yet in that place unto this day. And the oxen which stood in that place daily licked up the salt to the extremities of their feet. And in the morning it would spring forth afresh, and they again licked it up unto this day. And Lot and two of his daughters that remained with him fled and escaped to the cave of Adullam, and they remained there for some time. And Abraham rose up early in the morning to see what had been done to the cities of Sodom. And he looked, and behold, the smoke of the cities going up like the smoke of a furnace. And Lot and his two daughters remained in the cave, And they made their father drink wine, and they lay with him. For they said there was no man upon the earth that could raise up seed from them, for they thought that the whole earth was destroyed. And they both lay with their father, and they conceived and bore sons. And the firstborn called the name of her son Moab, saying, From my father did I conceive him. He is the father of Moabim unto this day. And the younger also called her son Benamini. He is the father of the children of Ammon to this day. And after this, Lot and his two daughters went away from there, and he dwelt on the other side of the Jordan with his two daughters and their sons. And the sons of Lot grew up, and they went and took themselves women from the land of Canaan, and they begot children, and they were fruitful and multiplied. And at the time, Abraham journeyed from the plain of Mamre, and he went to the land of Pelishtim, and he dwelt in Gerar. It was in the 25th year of Abraham's that he came to Gerar in the land of Pelishtim. And when they entered the land, he said to Sarah, his woman, Say, you are my sister to anyone that shall ask you, in order that we may escape the evil of the inhabitants of the land. And as Abraham was dwelling in the land of the Pelishtim, the servants of Amalek, king of the Pelishtim, saw that Sarah was exceedingly beautiful, and they asked Abraham concerning her, and he said, She is my sister. And the servants of Amalek went to Amalek, saying, A man from the land of Canaan is come to dwell in the land, and he has a sister that is exceedingly fair. And Abimelech heard the words of his servant who praised Sarah to him. And Abimelech sent his officers, and they brought Sarah to the king. And Sarah came to the house of Abimelech, and the king saw that Sarah was beautiful, and she pleased him exceedingly. And he approached her and said to her, What is that man to you with whom you did come to our land? And Sarah answered and said, He is my brother, and we came from the land of Canaan to dwell wherever we could find a place. And Abimelech said to Sarah, Behold, my land is before you. Place your brother in any part of this land that pleases you, and it will be our duty to exalt and elevate him above all the people of the land, since he is your brother. And Abimelech sent for Abraham, and Abraham came to Abimelech. And Abimelech said to Abraham, Behold, I have given orders that you shall be honored as your desire on account of your sister Sarah. And Abraham went forth from the king, and the king's present followed him. As at evening time, before men lie down to rest, the king was sitting upon his throne, and a deep sleep fell upon him, and he lay upon the throne and slept until morning. And he dreamed that the angel of Yahweh came to him with a drawn sword in his hand, and the angel stood over Abimelech and wished to slay him with the sword. And the king was terrified in his dream and said to the angel, And what have I sinned against you, that you came to slay me with your sword? And the angel answered and said to Abimelech, Behold, you die on the account of this woman which you did yesternight bring to your house, for she is a married woman, the woman of Abraham, who came to your house. Now therefore return that man his woman, for she is his woman, and should you not return her, know that you will surely die, you and all that belongs to you. And on that night there was a great outcry in the land of Pelishtim, and the inhabitants of the land saw the figure of a man standing with a drawn sword in his hand. And he smote the inhabitants of the land with a sword. Yea, he continued to smite them. And the angel of Yahweh smote the whole land of Pelishtim on that night. And there was a great confusion that night and on the following morning. And every womb was closed, and all their issues, and the hand of Yahweh was upon them on account of Sarah, woman of Abraham, with Abimelech had taken. And in the morning, Abimelech rose with terror and confusion, and with a great dread. And he sent and had his servants called in, and he reached his dream, and he related his dream to them. And the people were greatly afraid. And one man standing amongst the servants of the king answered the king, saying, O sovereign king, restore this woman to her man, for he is her man. For the like happened to the king of Mitzrayim when this man came unto Mitzrayim. And he said concerning his woman, she is my sister, for such is the manner of doing when he comes to dwell in the land in which he is a stranger. And Pharaoh sent and took this woman for a woman, and Yahuwah brought upon him grievous plagues until he returned the woman to her man. Now therefore, O sovereign king, know what happened yesternight to the whole land, for there was a very great consternation and a great pain in lamentation, and we know that it was on account of the woman which you did take. Now, therefore, restore this woman to her man, lest it should befall us as it did to Pharaoh, king of Mitzrayim, and his subjects, and that we may not die. And Abimelech hath hastened and called, and had Sarah called for, and she came before him. And he had Abram called for, and he came before him. And Abimelech said to them, what is this work you have been doing and saying you are brother and sister? And I took this woman for a woman. And Abram said, because I thought I should suffer death on the account of my woman. And Abimelech took flocks and herds and men servants and maid servants and 1,000 pieces of silver, and he gave them to Abraham. And he returned Sarah to him. And Abimelech said to Abraham, behold, the whole land is before you. Dwell in it, wherefore you shall choose. And Abraham and Sarah, his woman, went forth from the king's presence with honor and respect, and they dwelt in the land, even in Gerar. And all the inhabitants of the land of Philistine and the king's servants were still in pain through the plague which the angel had inflicted upon the whole night on account of Sarah. And Abimelech sent for Abraham, saying, pray now for your servants to Yahuwah Elohim, that he may put away this mortality from among us. And Abram prayed on account of Abimelech and his subjects, and Abram heard the prayer, and Yahuwah heard the prayer of Abraham, and he healed Abimelech and all his subjects.